The rotors of the transport helicopter were still slowing when the crew chief waved her out, but she didn't wait for the blades to settle. She stepped straight into the whipping wind, boots thudding onto the aircraft carrier deck with a certainty that made even the deckhands pause. She was small, compact, almost unassuming, but there was something about her presence, a density, a quiet gravity, that made space bend around her. The carrier had seen thousands of arrivals, pilots swaggering, Marines stomping, VIP stepping down with sunglasses and entitlement. But never someone like her. She didn't carry a clipboard, didn't wear the expression of someone here to observe. Her dark ponytail snapped behind her, and her eyes, cold, assessing, razor-precise, swept across the sprawling deck like she was mapping vulnerabilities no one else could see. Admiral Grant Harlan watched from the opposite end of the deck, arms crossed. He'd been told a civilian liaison was arriving for a joint op briefing. Civilian liaisons, in his experience, meant political headaches. They asked too many questions, slowed operations, and walked around as if they understood warfare because they'd read classified PowerPoints. And right now, of all times, he didn't have the patience. The carrier was on high alert in the strait, and every second counted. So when he saw her approach, calm, silent, intense, he let out a faint sigh through his nose. Of course she'd look like trouble. She approached without hesitation, without awe, without any of the stiffness people usually showed in the presence of a SEAL admiral. She moved like someone who had long stopped being impressed by rank. "Admiral Harlan," she said simply. Her voice was steady, controlled, almost quiet, but it cut through the roar of engines like a blade. He gave her a polite nod, the kind he saved for people he had already decided not to take seriously. "Welcome aboard the USS Archangel. We like to keep things informal on my deck, so let's drop the full titles." He offered a smirk he'd used 1,000 times. "Tell me, what's your call sign?" It was a joke. A gentle jab, a way to remind her she was in a world she didn't belong to, but she didn't smile, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Her expression remained perfectly still as she answered, "Iron Widow." The two words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They hit the air like a detonation. Harlan's smirk froze on his face. His breath snagged. For a split second, he looked like a man who had just seen someone return from the dead. The color drained from his features so fast too near. Petty officers instinctively stepped closer as if the admiral might fall. Behind them, deck crew paused mid-task. A mechanic holding a wrench stopped in place. A pilot climbing into a cockpit hesitated, one foot suspended in the air, because Iron Widow was not a casual call sign, not one anyone could claim, not one that ever appeared in open channels. That name belonged buried in classified archives so restricted that even Harlan, a SEAL admiral with decades of clearance, had only seen it 3 times in his career, each time connected to missions that should have been impossible. Missions that had ended with successes no one could logically explain, and losses no one was allowed to investigate. "Iron Widow," Harlan repeated, barely audible. He took a half-step back, instinctive, as if something primal in him had triggered the alarm. Her face didn't soften. "You asked." "Impossible." He whispered. "You." That unit was wiped, gone, the files redacted. She finished, buried, classified beyond recall. She shrugged slightly. "People believe whatever the paperwork tells them." He stared at her like a man staring at a ghost stepping into daylight, and maybe, in a way, he was. She shifted her duffel slightly on her shoulder. "I'm here for the operation, if that's still acceptable." The Admiral's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "You're Iron Widow." The woman tilted her head. "That a problem, Admiral?" He swallowed hard. "No," he said softly. "It's a miracle, or a warning." She walked past him without another word. and every seal on that deck turned to watch her, not with curiosity, not with confusion, but with the uneasy awe reserved for legends that were never meant to be real. Admiral Harlan followed her into the carrier's interior corridor, his boots striking the metal deck with a rhythm far less steady than usual. The wind and noise of the flight deck faded behind them, replaced by the hum of fluorescent lights and the low vibration of turbines deep within the ship's core. Sailors moved aside without being told, sensing something unusual in the air. He kept staring at her profile, sharp, composed, a woman who looked like she'd carved her own edges on battlefields no one would ever read about. She didn't walk like a civilian, she didn't walk like military either. She walked like something outside those definitions, something forged in the spaces between orders and secrets. "You can't be her," he muttered finally, voice echoing faintly in the narrow hall. It wasn't denial. It was disbelief clawing at his throat. "Iron Widow, she's a rumor," she finished without slowing, "a myth, a bedtime story for operators who think they're untouchable." Harlan tensed. "A classified red-level ghost." She stopped. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just enough for him to walk one step past her before realizing she'd halted. She turned her head slightly, eyes cool and unreadable. "You've read the stories," she said, "but you have no idea which ones were true." His jaw clenched. "I know the aftermath. Wiped units, intel trails going dark, mission reports with more black bars than text." She resumed walking, her voice calm. "That's what happens when the truth is inconvenient." He followed, heart pounding. But Iron Widow wasn't just a person. It was a threat profile, an entire file of operations where no surviving witness could agree on what happened. She gave the faintest smile, thin, sharp, not kind. "And that's why they assumed it wasn't one person." Harlan froze mid-step. The implication hit like a blast wave. "You mean there wasn't a team?" She stopped again, pivoting slowly to face him. "There was a team," she said quietly. "Once, but I was the only one who walked out." For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. The corridor felt too narrow, the air too thin. "The Widow Protocol," he whispered. "They told us it was theoretical, too extreme, too unstable." "Which is why it was perfect for the missions they didn't want connected to them," she said. Her tone was matter of fact, not proud. "But you didn't stop me in the hallway to talk ghosts, Admiral. You stopped me because you're wondering what I'm doing here." He swallowed. "Yes, because if you are who you say you are, then someone with your clearance doesn't just drop onto my carrier without a reason." Her gaze hardened. "Your operation in the Strait has a breach." Harlan felt the hairs on his arms rise. "You're certain?" "Completely." She pulled a small object from her pocket, a folded patch, black fabric, frayed edges, one corner scorched, the Iron Widow insignia, faded but unmistakable. She held it between two fingers like someone presenting evidence of a crime. Harlan's eyes widened. "Is that the last thing my team sent before they fell off the grid?" She said, "Recovered from a dead channel last year. Took me 12 months to trace the interference source." He stared at the patch as if it were radioactive. "You think the same people who erased your unit are targeting my carrier?" "I don't think," she corrected. "I know." The ship hummed louder, the sounds of sailors passing in the distance, but inside that conversation, the world narrowed to a single point. Harlan stepped back, trying to regain command of his breath. "Why tell me now?" "Because they're not after you," she said. "They're after what you're carrying, and because once this starts, you're going to need every seal on this ship, and every ghost you thought was dead." Something in her voice, steady, sharp, undeniable, cut through his doubts. "What do you need?" he asked, no hesitation this time. Her answer was simple. "Access." To what? Everything. And the way she said it made him understand something chilling. She wasn't here to assist the operation. She was here to save it, and possibly to avenge something buried so deep the military pretended it never happened. Hours later, the command center of the USS Archangel pulsed with low blue light and quiet urgency. Screens glowed, data feeds cascaded in real time, analysts monitored incoming bursts of encrypted chatter. But all eyes, consciously or not, kept drifting toward the woman standing at the central console. Iron Widow, no longer a myth, no longer a rumor whispered in special operations circles, now a real, breathing presence dominating the room without raising her voice. Admiral Harlan stood beside her, arms folded, trying to hide the unease tightening in his chest. He had seen elite operators, tactical prodigies, intelligence savants, but nothing quite like this woman. Her hands moved with surgical precision over the holographic map, flicking through data streams faster than most analysts could scroll them. She read patterns that others didn't even see. She caught anomalies in seconds that entire teams would miss in hours, and she never once hesitated, not once. The SEAL officers behind them exchanged low murmurs. A young lieutenant whispered, "Sir, she's not supposed to be real." Harlan didn't answer him. He wasn't sure what the correct response even was. Then she froze the main display, found it. Her voice barely rose above the hum of electronics, yet the entire command center snapped into silence. On the screen was the ocean, black, calm, undisturbed. But she adjusted the filters, toggled between thermal signatures, then switched to a classified resonance scan tool that only a handful of people in the world knew existed. Suddenly, like a ghost emerging from deep water, a shape appeared. A massive vessel, cloaked behind stolen U.S. stealth technology, running silent at the edge of their radar shadow. A shape that could not be trailing them. The room collectively inhaled. "That," she said, pointing at the blurred silhouette, "is not a civilian craft. It's a ghost destroyer." Harlan blinked. "Those are still in prototyping. Not even the Navy has operational versions yet." "Someone does," she said coldly. "And they're stalking your carrier?" The tension thickened like fog. "How did you know to look for that frequency pattern?" An intelligence officer asked, voice shaky. She hesitated, just long enough for the room to feel it. "Because I helped design the first prototype," she said softly, "before my unit disappeared." A ripple of shock passed through the command center. The Admiral turned fully toward her. "You built the Widow-class systems." She didn't deny it. "And you never added that to your file." She gave him a look that said, "You know exactly why it's not in my file." Before Harlan could speak again, the entire command center erupted with red alarms. Sirens blared. Emergency lights flashed crimson across the walls. The ghost destroyer on the screen shifted, its energy signature spiking, weapons warming, targeting systems active. "Admiral," someone shouted, "the destroyer is locking onto us." Chaos slammed through the room. Officers scrambled. Technicians began data dumps. Communications lit up like fireworks. But Iron Widow didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't blink. She stood perfectly still, her eyes tracking the threat with terrifying calm. Harlan grabbed her arm. "Can you stop it? Tell me you can stop that thing." She turned to him with a steadiness that made his breath catch. "Admiral," she said, "if I weren't sure, I wouldn't have boarded your ship." She reached for a SEAL tactical headset sitting on the console, gear she had no right to access, and slid it over her ear with practiced precision, as if she'd worn one every day of her life. Then she keyed into the encrypted SEAL TAC channel. Her voice came out low, cold, commanding enough to still the entire room. "All teams, this is Iron Widow," she said. "Lock in." For a moment, time stopped. SEALs froze mid-stride. Officers stared at her. The lieutenant who had doubted her earlier went pale as chalk. The Admiral felt something long, buried in him rise, a mixture of awe and fear, because the call sign wasn't just a name, it was an order. One that only the highest tier of operators would dare to acknowledge, and every SEAL on that ship responded with a single, unified click into the channel, silent confirmation that they heard her, that they followed her, that they believed her. In the command center's red glow, she stood like a shadow resurrected, small, calm, unbreakable. Harlan realized then why the world had buried her, not because she was dangerous, but because she was unstoppable, a ghost forged in classified darkness, a legend stepping back into the light. Iron Widow was not just alive, she was ready to go to war.